Historically, in addition to having the most formidable military for the past 50 years, the United States was also seen as having impressive soft power. And this is a term coined by the late Harvard scholar Joseph Nye, and it rests on three pillars: an appealing culture, second, political values that a company actually upholds, and third, a foreign policy imbued with moral authority. Today, each of these pillars is being eroded. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. And you can read more about that in the bio or the notes. My intent is to share stories and experiences and hopefully provide some life and career lessons that will help you on your journey. Please follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Ruthless Truth. There's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. General format: I'll share some initial commentary on current news or just my thoughts. Then I'll have a deeper discussion on one topic, which will be today's truth. And then I like to finish with an American history fun fact. Okay, hope everybody had a good Holy Week. News-wise, it has been a very, very busy week. I feel like a black preacher myself today because as I consider all of the topics worth discussion, man, I wish I had more time. Okay, where to start? First, a follow-up and update to a statement I made last week. In that episode, I said that TSA had been paid, including all back pay. However, a friend of mine who is a TSA officer reached out to me with a correction. While TSA officers are now getting paid, they have not received all of the back pay. Specifically, at that time, they had not received a week and a half of pay from February, and as of today, that is still true. So I just want to clear that up as I strive to be factual and accurate. Okay, next, I will continue to resist discussing the Iran war in any depth. Rhetoric has been escalating to embarrassingly unprofessional and unpresidential levels, and I will not address that here. But I cannot escape how surreal the world is now. And I'd rather we all just kind of lift our heads above the fray for a moment and see the broader, more long-term effect to the United States and our standing in the world. These are unprecedented times. The United States has entered a new era. And the most disturbing effect? Many countries, including our allies, no longer believe the United States can be trusted. Not trustworthy? What a hell of a space for us to occupy. Historically, in addition to having the most formidable military for the past 50 years, the United States was also seen as having impressive soft power. And this is a term coined by the late Harvard scholar Joseph Nye, and it rests on three pillars: an appealing culture, second, political values that a company actually upholds, and third, a foreign policy imbued with moral authority. Today, each of these pillars is being eroded. Nothing more so than our moral authority. Specifically, over the past 15 months, the United States has reneged on international trade deals, interfered in international relations of smaller countries, threatened to take Greenland by force, and erratically imposed oppressive tariffs on our closest allies, especially our closest ally, Canada. Canada is America's largest trading partner, but they are now talking directly with China and other countries to negotiate deals because they don't see the United States as trustworthy. Additionally, our European allies are not only refusing to join the war with Iran, but they are also negotiating directly with Iran to work out their own oil deals. And while it's true, the U.S. gets very little oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz, the oil industry is a global market. So if prices increase anywhere, they will increase everywhere. And oil is not the only commodity that passes through the strait. A large percentage of the world's supply of fertilizer passes through, and increases in fertilizer pricing will affect all farmers and the prices of fruits and vegetables. But back to the bigger picture. As mentioned, the United States has commanded the most potent military force really for the past 75 years. And it has provided us with the moral high ground because we have always, or mostly always, been very judicious with our military might. We know that many other countries would not have such restraint. Because regardless of how you feel about Israel, they are the only nation in that region that possesses nuclear capability. And despite being surrounded by enemies and constantly under attack, they've never deployed nuclear weapons. But I am certain that if any of their enemies had such capability, Israel would be a sheet of glass. Now, of course, for decades, every U.S. president, as well as the entire world, knew the U.S. could have invaded any country and overwhelm the opposition's resistance. But no president has actually unleashed that power until now. This administration appears intoxicated by their military might, and the president actually said that bombing Iran was, quote, fun. I know he ran on a theme of American first, but we are quickly headed to America alone because no one wants to be our friend or trust us. You know, in the last 100 years, there have been just a few defining events or periods that people continue to discuss. The Great Depression, the end of World War II, the Civil Rights Movement in Vietnam War, the 60s, and 9/11. These are periods that later generations ask about. You know, what was it like during the Depression? What were you doing? Well, years from now, your children and grandchildren will be asking you about our current situation. Who did you support? What did you do? I don't think any of us want to be embarrassed to answer these questions. Now, related to this, there have recently been some cracks in the MAGA base support. Specifically, we're seeing more and more Trump supporters speak out against this action as it is driving up the price of gas at the pump. Opponents of the president are appalled and bewildered. They're saying, this is it? This is the issue it took for you to criticize the administration? Not the slashing of funds for health care and other domestic programs, not the gunning down of law-abiding Americans in the street, not the tariffs that have increased prices, not the nasty, belligerent attitude toward reporters and women, but gas increases $1 and now you're upset? Okay, here's what you confused people need to understand. For about 30% of the population, there is absolutely nothing the president can say or do that will change their support for him. Nothing. And the only reason they're speaking about the gas is this is the one outcome that directly affects them every day. People may not have a clear recall of price changes from other items, but they are acutely aware of the price of gas. All the other items I just mentioned don't affect them. Abusing immigrants that have committed no crimes, not their problem. Gunning down citizens in the street, hey, didn't happen in my town. Abusive rhetoric, great, own the damn libs. They support him because they truly believe that white people are the victims in this country. They want to repel any more infringement on their white Christian homeland. And the president, by deed and action, consistently shows them that he is on their side and only cares about the things they care about. So stop trying to figure them out. Stop trying to understand how so many people still adamantly support the president. It's not that complicated. No, invest your time, energy, and focus on November and ensuring that we fire the current do-nothing Congress. Okay, let's get to today's truth. In today's Truth, I want to briefly discuss the state of the U.S. job market, but really concentrate on how you can navigate and manage your career within this environment. I'll share some tips and guidelines that may help you. Okay, first, what is the state of the job market and what are some of the new trends? Well, one economist described the job market with one word: whiplash. And this is actually an appropriate description because for 10 straight months, monthly job growth has alternated between positive and negative. The past 3 months alone went from a gain of 160,000 jobs to a loss of 133,000 jobs to most recently a gain of 178,000 jobs. So there's no doubt that the job market is cooling. I mean, it's tough out there. We're in a low hire, low fire environment where hiring has slowed, but companies also want to avoid mass layoffs. Trends vary by sector, with healthcare fueling growth while federal jobs are rapidly decreasing. And wage growth is modest at best across most industries. Now, for job seekers, there are a few headwinds. First, job hopping isn't as lucrative as it's been in previous years, where workers often experience double-digit increases in salary when changing jobs. Those increases are now more in the range of 5 to 9%. And it's especially tougher for workers in their 20s and 30s who face heightened uncertainty due to AI. Okay, that's the landscape. But regardless of the macro environment, two factors consistently apply in career planning: decision-making and negotiation. Okay, first, what do you want to do? I know this sounds simple, but for many people, this is actually a tough question. Do you want to stay with your current company, with your current job? If you want to stay, are you content? Or are you interested in pursuing new opportunities within the organization? And if you do want to make changes, do you know why? Is it more money, more responsibility, a different work culture? These are all self-inventory questions that only you can answer. Now, most of these questions also apply if you're looking for a totally new job or new organization. So let's assume you've answered these questions and you have a target list of positions that interest you. And I'm going to skip over your path to securing an interview, as there are many. But assuming you get the opportunity to discuss a new or different position, well, your objective is to leave the interviewer with a clear understanding of who you are and what you can do for them. No matter how viable a candidate you may be, you're not the decision maker. They are. So first, be very prepared to discuss anything or any position in your job history and be able to explain how you made a positive impact, ideally in a way that's quantifiable. One of the biggest mistakes I see in potential candidates is focusing too much on activity instead of results. I'll hear people talk about all the things they did, but candidly, as a hiring manager, I really don't care much about what you did. I want to hear the outcome and the results. I'm looking to hear what happened that would not have happened if not for you. That's the definition of a difference maker. Also, this is not the time to be humble. The fact is, many people are uncomfortable talking about themselves or tooting their own horn. You got to get over that. Now, this doesn't mean you need to be arrogant or cocky, and it's totally fine to acknowledge and recognize that others were involved and contributed. But make sure you don't undersell what you did. Okay, that's the interviewee side. But you are also an interviewer in this discussion. You want to make sure you understand the potential role, what is expected, and what defines success. While I have interviewed scores of potential candidates, I've also been on many interviews, and it was always important for me to know what I'm potentially getting into. There's nothing worse than making a job change and then finding yourself worse off than you were before. And especially in marketing, where this job function varies greatly by organization. You know, in some places, marketing is simply sales support or Marcom. In others, marketing is seen as a critical leader of the business. You want to know So, some of my questions. What is the role of marketing in this organization? And regardless of the function of the person interviewing you, their answer will reveal a lot. Then I ask, a year from now, when my performance is being evaluated, what would you have needed to see for me to be viewed as having had an exceptional year? Because I'll tell them, I want to know where the bar is so I can be sure to clear it. This also conveys an overachiever mentality, which is always valued. Then I want to know where I can have impact. So I ask, what do I get to decide? This will tell you how much opportunity you'll have to make impact. When I came out of college, I was looking at opportunities in retail merchandise management. It was a hot sector. And all the major stores had programs. This included Macy's, Dillard's, Sears, Neiman, Saks, and others. I chose to go with JCPenney. And a lot of my friends and peers looked down on this. They were saying things like, damn, man, you working at JCPenney? Because it was not seen as prestigious or a glamorous store. So why was I attracted to JCPenney? Because they were the only major retailer that allowed store-level managers to make buying decisions. All the other stores had centralized buyers in New York who selected the merchandise for each store, and the only role for the store merchandiser was to display and sell it. But Penny's allowed 20 to 25% of the merchandise to be selected at store level, which provided me more opportunity to take risk and stand out. And boy, did I take some risk. In that business, you bought 9 months out. So I had to make my back to school selections in December and January. Fortunately, I was mostly right. The point, look for opportunities where you can get results, improving your personal story. Okay, back to your questions for the interviewer. After learning what I could and could not do, my last question, or one of my last questions, would be, if I want to do something, who are the people I have to convince? This would give me a sense of culture and bureaucracy. I didn't want to be in an environment where it was nearly impossible to get to try something different or just to try to get something done. Okay, that's a good primer for choosing and deciding what you want to do and who you want to work for. Now, let's assume you get an offer. How do you respond? How can you ensure you receive a fair and acceptable financial package? Well, a few questions to answer for yourself even before you receive an offer. First, how badly do you want this job? Because if you really want it, you shouldn't be too aggressive in negotiations. Most of the time when an offer is made, the company already has a backup candidate in mind. And if your demands are too unreasonable, they'll just go to the next guy. Okay? Second, what is the minimum you will accept? I always had a walkaway number in mind. Only you know what that number is. Oftentimes you will be asked, what are your salary expectations? This is a trap question. Don't answer with a number, maybe a range, but try not to answer it, as you may be lowballing yourself, which violates the first rule of negotiation. Don't negotiate with yourself. Instead, just say, I'd like to be paid fairly relative to my peers. And so to do that, then ask, so what is the median salary for this position? Now you know the range. And depending on your qualifications, you can determine if you deserve or will ask for more or less than the median. Okay, so now you receive the offer. What do you say now? Well, for me, regardless of the offer, my answer was always the same. Thank you so much. We can definitely get there from here. That brief response conveys appreciation and gratitude for the offer, but also signals that negotiations are coming. Okay? One additional option to consider. Managers are very conscious of their salary structure and tiers, and they don't really want to have that disrupt that hierarchy by paying you way outside of what others make. I've faced this a few times. And in these situations, I ask about a signing bonus. And here's why. A signing bonus allows them to give you more money while keeping their salary structure intact. Also, salary information eventually leaks out, while bonuses are usually kept confidential. So your hiring manager may be more amenable to this approach. Okay, I could talk about this for hours. I wish I had more time, but I need to wrap this up. So to summarize, if you're looking for a new job, whether internally or externally, the most important questions can only be answered by you. Why are you looking and what do you want? And once you know, make sure you ask the questions to ensure that you know what your role will actually be. Be sure to focus on your individual impact in previous positions or experiences. And finally, stay true to the rules of negotiation. Okay, let's get to today's American History Fun Fact. Today's American History Fun Fact. Today, we will review the history behind one of America's most iconic restaurateurs. So, Ruth Ann Fertile was born February 5th, 1927 in New Orleans, Louisiana. Her father worked as an insurance salesman and her mother was a kindergarten teacher. And from an early age, it was clear to see that Ruth was a very bright child. She skipped several grades and graduated from high school at the age of 15. The family used the money from her brother Sid's World War II GI Bill benefits to send Ruth to Louisiana State University, from where she graduated at age 19 with honors in chemistry and physics. On October 2nd, 1948, at age 21, she married Rodney Fertile, who lived in Baton Rouge and shared her love of horses. And they had two sons, Jerry and Randy. In 1951, the couple opened a racing stable in Baton Rouge. Ruth earned a thoroughbreds trainer's license, making her the first female horse trainer in Louisiana. However, unfortunately, Ruth and Rodney divorced in 1958. From there, Ruth struggled to support herself and her teenage sons on just alimony payments. She initially attempted to generate income by making drapes at home, but in 1961, she began working as a lab technician at Tulane University Medical School, making $4,800 per year, which is equivalent to about $52,000 a year today. By 1965, Ruth Fertile realized, she wasn't making enough money to send her sons to college. So she started looking for new opportunities, and then she saw an ad for the sale of a restaurant. The restaurant was Chris's Steakhouse, founded by Chris Matulik in 1927, the year Ruth was born. She saw it as an omen and decided to purchase the restaurant over the loud objections of her friends, family, banker, and lawyer, especially as Ruth knew nothing about the restaurant business. Ruth mortgaged her house and took out a loan for $22,000, $18,000 to purchase the restaurant, and another $4,000 for renovations. The new Chris's Steakhouse opened on May 24th, 1965, and on her first day, Ruth sold 35 steaks at $5 each. Within 6 months, she had made over double her annual salary from her previous job. So what made the restaurant special? Well, Ruth emphasized premium quality steaks coupled with friendly and exceptional service. She staffed the restaurant with single mothers, as she believed them to be hardworking and reliable. Additionally, Ruth put her science background to work and designed an 1800-degree broiler to cook the steaks. And then the steaks were served on 500-degree plates. And just before the plates were brought to the table, a pat of butter was added to give it that signature sizzle that we all enjoy today. For many years, Chris's Steakhouse was the only upscale restaurant in New Orleans with an all-female waitstaff. From the beginning, her restaurant attracted local politicians as well as athletes, businessmen, and reporters. Local celebrities like Fats Domino were regulars. In 1976, Ruth signed a new 10-year lease on the building of her restaurant. However, soon after signing the lease, a fire totally destroyed the building. Now, fortunately, Ruth had also recently purchased a second property nearby with the intent of renting it out as party space. So within 7 days of the fire, she had relocated the restaurant to the new location, which was just a few blocks away, and reopened it, expanding to 160 seats in the process. The previous restaurant only had 60 seats. But there was a problem. Ruth's sales agreement with Chris Matulik prevented her from using the restaurant's name anywhere other than the original address, which had just burned down. Okay? So to get around it, the legal barrier of it, the new restaurant was named Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Over the years, Ruth Fertile expressed that she always hated the name, but she found a way to get used to it and get around it. Fertile was content to operate her single location restaurant and had no intent of expansion. But one of her very loyal customers begged her to sell him a franchise. So in 1977, Thomas T.J. Moran opened the first Ruth Chris franchise in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Ruth commented, "We never looked for franchisees. They came to us." From there, the chain expanded rapidly over the next 2 decades, with over 80 locations in the U.S. and some overseas. And it earned Ruth Fertile a number of accolades as an entrepreneur and the title, the First Lady of American Restaurants, or she was also called the Empress of Steak. Ruth Fertile continued to run the Ruth's Chris business throughout her life. When she fell ill in 1999, she sold the chain to Madison Dearborn Partners of Chicago. A lifelong smoker, Ruth died of lung cancer in 2002 at the age of 75. She was buried in Metairie Cemetery, Louisiana, in a lavish mausoleum that she and her friend and business partner, Lena Duke, had commissioned in 1995 and cost over $500,000. Ruth Fertile's legacy? A gritty female entrepreneur who, as a single mother with no restaurant experience, entered and conquered the male-dominated industry. She had an unparalleled dedication to quality, creating a global brand that endures to this day. Ruth Chris restaurants now have over 150 locations in 21 countries. Okay, that's all I have for you today on The Ruthless Truth. Thank you so much for listening. Again, follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Ruthless Truth. And there's a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. Thanks again, and I will talk to all of you again soon.